Thanks so much for the introduction. My lens to the future of food is a bit unconventional. I work with data scientists, ML engineers, and myself as a cultural strategist. We look at people and culture through publicly available data. And if you think about public available data, there's a lot, from a menu that's been published, a recipe that's been put online, what else, from like price index, ingredient yield, FAO reports. These are all publicly available data. And I use that type of data with my team of strategists and engineers and data scientists to try to make sense of what is actually happening in the world. And for the past 3 years, my team and I have explored the future of food. I worked closely with our data scientists to look at what's happening in our planet, to try to understand what's happening to our diets. And we scroll through hundreds of thousands of data points, data sources, to try to layer them and map them together to create different plausible futures of tomorrow. And we're particularly interested in food because if you ever come to our office, we're just a group of foodies. But also more importantly, food is so central to our survival. It's so central to our culture, how we express our identity, and creativity. So the topic of food is something that we hold dearly to our hearts. And today we're very lucky because we have a vast choice of ingredients, of recipes that we can access, but that is changing. And in our work of looking at historical data, not just the past year, but we're talking about past 25 years of data and projecting it to the next decade, I always look at projections that are a little bleak. What you can see is that if we continue today's trajectory, we might not see a lot of the food we know and love today. That would be soybeans, coconut, coffee beans. They won't be there in the future. But actually what's more likely is that they're still gonna be there, but at a price that's less accessible to the public, and potentially only the rich can access. And that's not just some dystopian vision that I'm trying to paint. We're seeing headlines after headlines, particularly this year as well, that our food resources are being strained. This particular picture that we captured, in Spain this year in March, the headlines were the top stolen item in grocery market is olive oil. And that's because the prices have soared so highly because of climate change, heat, and rising temperatures. So headlines after headlines, we're seeing that our crops prices are going up, our crop yields are going down. And in the food polycrises that we are seeing today, the job of my team in Synthesis is to try to make sense of that data and help categories and businesses future-proof themselves. And we talk about publicly open data at the start. These goes from authoritative sources like UN and UNEP and WHO to the latest patents that's been filed, the latest technologies that's been filed according to a category, as well as at the consumer level. What are they posting online? What are they liking? What are they following? What are they buying and searching for on e-commerce as well? And the Future of Food event, it's a yearly event and also research that we do independently, where we look at these humongous publicly available data sources and trying to make sense of what the future in 2034 would look like. So more importantly as well, not just how our diets would change, our habits would change, the food that we eat, but also what businesses can do to prepare for the future ahead. And so let's talk about the challenges that's ahead. And the challenges that we're setting up today isn't new. Probably everybody in this room have thought of it, heard of it before. The first one being food demand going up. So the population is growing. By 2050, we know that there's 1.5 billion more people to feed. That means that we need to double our crops that we produce today. And then the second is greenhouse gases are also going up. Temperature is rising, so it's making it harder to grow food. What this paints as a picture is that more demand for food and resources are going down. I'm not sure if anybody's surprised, hopefully not, because we've actually known this problem for quite a while. In fact, in 2019, almost over a decade ago, 195 countries came together and signed a historical agreement to pledge that we will not let global temperature rise well below 2 degrees above the pre-industrial rate. Ideally, 1.5. So let's take a look at how we're doing today. Our current trajectory range now, we're more likely to hit a range of around 3.2 degrees. So back then, 2 degrees was our worst case scenario of what we can actually responsibly do. Today, that worst case scenario is our best case scenario. And to show that we've known this issue for quite a while, Financial Times this year published that for the past 11 consecutive months, we've actually been hitting well above 1.5 degrees. And so every year it's getting progressively hotter. And our future generations will know that we knew this for a long time, and we knew this at so much detail, and we were still so slow to act. So what we see here is, one second. So when we, as futurists, look at data, we consider two things. The first one being critical certainty. So these are things that we know for certain will happen, such as population growth, growing food demand, greenhouse gases increasing. The second thing is critical uncertainty. So these are like trade relationships that could swing either way. And for this particular future of food event that we've done, we looked at the first one. So critical certainties, slow macro shifts that we know are going to happen. The two certainties were growing population as well as growing greenhouse gas. And we modeled these drivers of change to try to understand in 2034, what are the two scenarios that present to us around the future of food? And two scenarios emerge after we looked through 100,000 data points and data sources, where we explored how consumer habits would change, where government policies might change, as well as how businesses might act. And these two scenarios are called radical transformation and resilient adaptation. And I'm going to give you guys a few seconds to study the images to see if you can identify how these two scenarios are slightly different. So hopefully the stark black and white paints a different picture of what we might be eating, our diets and our habits in the future. So the most likely scenario to happen when we ran the modeling would be the world of resilient adaptation. So far from greenhouse gases going down, it's actually projected to increase by 21% from today, and we'll be forced to adapt to those consequences. And for the radical transformation world, the black one, it's a world where we see that consumers are starting to change their habits, and we're starting to see a reduction in greenhouse gases. But unfortunately, that's occurring just a little over 1/3 of the scenarios. So what do these two scenarios look like? In this talk today, we're going to focus on the scenario that's more likely to happen. So this is called resilient adaptation. This is the world where consumers still stay close to their eating habits. They're not willing to change their diet. So for example, we're not willing to give up maybe our meat-heavy diets and change to plant-based. And in terms of what governments and businesses are doing, they're more reactive to climate change. So this is the scenario. What that means is that we have to adapt with technology to create more novel foods and to replicate those flavors of diminishing ingredients. When we looked at what's driving and moving us towards this world, we see two things. One is a very strong dependency on technology in terms of our agri-food system. Cell-based agriculture, robotics, as well as bioengineered foods rise in this scenario. The second thing is dependency on synthetic solutions. So farming that heavily relies on engineered crops, monocrops, boosted by nutrients made from unnatural sources, is also ways where humans are adapting in this scenario. And to explore these two scenarios, we looked at three areas that we feel like had the biggest impact on food. So one is how we source, so where are ingredients coming from, how do we actually create the food? The second is how we stretch the food, given that we know that food waste is such a huge issue and declining our resources available. And the last one, which surprised me the most, which we'll tap into in a second, is sustenance. How do we get our nutrients in the future? And so the first one is how we source food. So we know that the type of diet that we consume has a huge impact on greenhouse gas emissions. So a vegan diet, for example, is much more sustainable than a meat-heavy diet. But it is incredibly unsustainable for us to adopt a potato-only diet for the rest of our lives. So actually how we source food, how we actually engineer food can make a difference. So what I'm about to show you is like some pictures of the food that we served in our event, because we're strong believers that the future is best experienced and not read. So what we've done is that we worked with a lot of chefs and bartenders in restaurants to bring these insights to life through food. So to bring this world to life in this resilient adaptation bath, what we've done is to serve a shrimp that comes from vertical ocean to represent that this world where we are heavily reliant on technology and using smart algorithms to make sure that, for example, the yield will become perfectly high and making sure that the environment is perfect to grow plump and abundant prawns. The second thing that we looked at was around food waste. This chart looks at the amount of food that we waste by country. So in total, China, India, and United States waste the most food. And Singapore, a tiny island, considerably wastes a lot less food. But that doesn't mean we're a very sustainable country, because this is the total amount. So if there's more people, obviously we waste more food. Can anyone guess, like, if we look at per capita, so per person in terms of waste, which market on this screen do you think wastes the most or the least food? If you get it right, or if you answer, you'll get an invitation to our office, which is quite near, and it's really nice. Any guesses? Waste most food? Oh, so little face. Okay. But okay, any other guesses? Okay, nice. So the stats surprised me a little bit, and it's not from us, it's from UNEP, so one of the most reputable sources, and it was just published this year, so it's the most latest. But the market that wastes the most food per capita is Italy. Any Italians in the room? Okay, then I feel safe saying what I'm about to say. But okay, like food waste statistics are notoriously hard to capture. If you think about how do people even measure food waste, do they go to their houses? Do they measure by weight? Do they measure by? So let me just caveat that there's like caveats to the data. But some researchers have hypothesized that Italian cuisines rely heavily on fresh ingredients. If you think about Italian food, it's like the freshest, the beautiful, the most plump tomato. And that might lead to, because fresh food spoils a lot faster, that might lead to more food waste. US, UK, they're quite high, but some people are thinking that because over 50% that of Britons and Americans, their diet actually is hyper-processed food. 50% of their calorie diet is from hyper-processed food. And the thing about hyper-processed food is that they are hyper-processed. They stay for very long, so that potentially might have impacted the amount of food waste. So there's dual benefits in reducing waste. Nearly 8% of the global greenhouse gas emission is caused by either lost or food waste. So actually, if we stretch food, we're able to create more food to feed the nation. And for dealing with food waste, it plays out a little differently in this world in resilient adaptation. Again, if you remember, this scenario is where consumers are reluctant to change their habit, so they still want to eat meat. And what we served the guests that day was pig ears. In certain markets, pig ears are like unconventional bits, typically discarded. And what we wanted to show is that when consumers still want to eat meat, they have no choice but to eat the discarded bit. And the little vegetable on top is also quite interesting. The chefs were quite creative with using all the stems, the peels, and the stalks of every other dish that they created in that event to create the salad here, to show that with vegetable prices increasing because of climate change, people would have no choice but to eat like the discarded bits of food. And the last part is sustenance. So what's happening with how we sustain our nutrients? And this area is the area that I was most surprised, and I want to get the stats correct. Since 1940s, we have been intensely farming. We've used artificial fertilizers, we've used pesticides, and our pursuit of additional, our unconditional pursuit of additional yield have led us to lost in nutrients. So in fact, from USDA, the food has lost its nutritional density by almost 50% in the past 50 years. So if you look at this, in 1984, to get your daily dose of iron, you will need to eat 7 servings of spinach. Today, that's 44 servings, which is a lot, which is also why in modern society, one of the nutrient density deficiencies that we have is iron deficiency. And we brought this to life, and I feel like the picture doesn't do it justice, but during the event, we wanted to portray the image of eating more calories, but you're actually getting less nutrients by having 2 different raviolis, one extremely, extremely uncomfortably big, but actually the amount of nutrients you're getting is the same. For the mains, we had a syringe of spirulina where you have to inject it into the meat to show that in the future, you would require additional supplements for your diet. And I presented the future that we imagine, and I wanted to leave a video for you to experience potentially the event yourself.
The world I grew up in was a beautiful, luscious place, brimming with vitality. Its surface was a tapestry of thriving forests, roaring oceans, and vast meadows. It was a place of abundance. But I'm watching you perish. We forgot that this world is not only our sanctuary and home, but also our responsibility. We harnessed every river, plowed every meadow, mined every mountain, and drained every ocean of their life. In our pursuit of more and more, we now face a silence and a roar of a world strained beyond its limits. The choices we make today shape our tomorrow. Whichever choice we make, our daily lives and rituals will profoundly change in the years ahead. From the food we produce, to the play we give our children, to the ways we travel, and homes where we live. Every choice, big and small, flickers its butterfly effect into the future. Will it be one of radical transformation, where we choose harmony with nature and to operate within planetary boundaries? Or will it be one of resilient adaptation, where science and technology fill the gaps in novel ways for us to thrive in new climate environments? If choices we make today shape our tomorrow, what tomorrow do you choose today?
Okay, so I'm ending the session with the question: if we know that the choices we make today can shape our tomorrow, what tomorrow do you choose? And as part of our research, there's so much more. I tried to share one of the more interesting bits, so I shared resilient adaptation, but we also have written up a different scenario. If you'd like to read the full report, please scan this QR code and add me on LinkedIn. I have a pretty unique name, so it's probably just me. And if you'd like to chat about any questions or if it sparked a thought, we're a very collaborative agency, so if you have any questions at all, please feel free to just ask or get in touch. Thank you so much.